All right, welcome back to the Elias Macko Show, second hour of the program. The former leader of the Reform Party of Canada has a warning. Mark Carney poses a threat to national unity. That's what he said in a Globe and Mail op-ed. Preston Manning saying that Canada is made up of disparate regions and that the Western region is getting fed up with top-down decisions from Ottawa. Let's go to Preston Manning now, who joins us on the line. Mr. Manning, tremendous pleasure to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Elias.
So, listen, I'll read a bit of your piece. Voters, particularly in central Atlantic Canada, need to realize that a vote for the Carney Liberals is a vote for Western secession, a vote for the breakup of Canada as we know it. Why don't you make that case for our listeners?
Well, it's based in part, Elias, on a Pollara Strategic Insights poll that was done just short time ago that ironically saw support for temporary decline in support for secession in Quebec, but showed an increase in support for that idea in Western Canada, mainly based in Alberta and Saskatchewan, but with potential to spread to Manitoba, BC, and the territories. And my own experience and my own connections here in Western Canada would indicate that there are just large numbers of people who are very disillusioned with the last 9 years of Liberal administration, do not believe there would be a change if just because there's been a change in leadership. And therefore, if the Liberals were to be re-elected under Carney, there'd be a upsurge in this support for secession. And what I've suggested is that if that should occur, if the Liberals should be re-elected under Carney, there should be a Canada West Constitutional Conference to provide some kind of forum, a sort of constructive forum, not an eccentric thing or an extremist thing, to consider what the options are. And if such a conference was held, secession would be one of the options that would be pushed by a fairly large number of people.
At the core of this, is it economic and, an Ottawa that has stifled resource development?
Yes, that's very. You hit it right on the head. It's the neglect and even treatment of the resource sectors, energy, agriculture, mining, forestry, as not just neglecting them, but almost treating those sectors as liabilities, environmental liabilities. So that would probably be the number one concern. The second would be that the Liberal government has run up deficit after deficit after deficit and run up the national debt to unprecedented levels. And of course, if some administration ever tries to repay any of that, it's going to do so by increasing taxation and the exploitation of the resource sectors. So those are two of the main things. Also, the fact that the previous federal government has been obsessed with climate change as the number one priority, whereas if you ask the ordinary citizen what's their priority, it isn't climate change. It's affordability, the cost of living, and affordability of housing and the basic necessities of life. So all of these things, and a lot of Westerners do not believe that the emphasis of the priorities of the government would change just because Mark Carney's the leader. In fact, when they see Mr. Carney, but they see behind him 23 MPs or cabinet ministers who just a month ago were advocating the very opposite of what he's talking about today, and have done so for 9 years. So that's at the root of this increasing dissatisfaction with the way the country's run. And my op-ed was more aimed at voters in central Canada and Atlantic Canada who I don't think realize that a vote for Carney and a vote for the Liberals will trigger a national unity problem on the Western Front.
Why do you think they don't see it? We're with Preston Manning, former leader of the official opposition under the Reform Party banner. Why do you think those voters in central Atlantic Canada don't see what you and the people out west see?
Well, partly because they're not told about it, and in fact, they're told the opposite. They're told that Mr. Carney will be a unifying figure, and without trying to trash the media, the Toronto-based traditional media simply do not report the political situation in Western Canada, never have, and are not doing so now. But I say this poll that was done by Pollara Strategics it's available to anybody, and it shows this disturbing development.
Let me ask you this, because I want to maybe throw out maybe an alternate timeline of what could happen. Let's say if Mark Carney does get elected on April 28th, because, I see what's happening in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Here in Quebec, right, the Quebec government, they've had a commission on trying to get as many powers as they can under the Canadian Federation. François Legault is probably an ally for some of the concerns that's happening out west. I've even heard Doug Ford, right, in Ontario say, enough's enough, knock it off at times to Ottawa. Don't you think that if Mark Carney would be reelected, that there may just be enough broad support from so many provinces with a message to Ottawa of knock it off, that there could be change?
Well, if some people might believe that, I personally don't believe it. If Ottawa had that inclination, it's not just Carney, it's got to be those members of the cabinet and members of the parliament. If they had an inclination to reduce Ottawa's intrusion in areas of provincial jurisdiction, they've had 9 years to do it. And in fact, what they have done is increase the intrusion of Ottawa in areas of provincial responsibility: health, natural resources, of course, even municipal government, which under the Constitution is provincial, but the Ottawa has intervened through the Canada Mortgage Bank, bypassing the provinces to make special deals with the cities. In fact, if there's a piece of legislation that would, I think, help unify the country, and I don't believe it would ever be passed by the Liberals because they've had 9 years to do it and have not done so, it would be an act respecting provincial jurisdiction, whereby the federal government amended these statutes which authorize its intrusion into areas of provincial jurisdiction, either repeals some of those acts or significantly modifies them to reduce their intrusion. And as you say, which is a very perceptive point, often Quebec and Alberta are posed as being opposed to each other or having conflict. This is one area where there's common ground. But both Quebec and Western Canada want a more decentralized federation. Quebec more for social and linguistic and language reasons, the West for economic reasons, but the common ground is a more decentralized federation. And that could be achieved by an act that reduced this intrusiveness, but I don't think you'd see it under the Liberals because they're the ones that have engineered this intrusiveness over the last 9 years.
Mr. Manning, just to wrap up, how would Alberta's separation even go down? I know Danielle Smith talked about a post-election look at a referendum question. How do you think it even happens?
Well, my own hope it doesn't happen, but I do think one of the difficulties, I think, or one of the dangers is that if no sort of democratic proper forum is provided for debating that option and maybe other options as well, you have a danger of a sort of a separatist movement that's eccentric or extreme. And that's why my suggestion would be a formal conference whereby the various options could be debated, including secession, if that enough people think that should be the case. And I do think that there's a necessity for that if the Liberals should be returned to power under Carney, because you're going to have a full-blown emphasis on secession. There's got to be some kind of container or some sort of forum provided for dealing with it.
Mr. Manning, we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Elias.
Take care. That's Preston Manning, former leader of the official opposition under the Reform Party banner.